As sports history fans, we often reminisce about the legends. Willis Reed limping onto the NBA Finals court, Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, Kerry Strug's courageous dismount, and so many more. These moments often define sports history. But what about the countless injuries that did not become legends, or careers that were derailed due to inadequate care? That's where this episode's sponsor comes in. Introducing to you, ILP Sports Consultants, your trusted sports injury partner, available 24/7. Brian Maelli at ILP Sports Consultants has over 20 years of experience in the orthopedic and sports medicine industry, and he has worked with athletes across the gamut, from youth to amateurs, professionals, in almost every sport played in the United States of America, accommodating athletes at every stage of their career. This adaptability ensures that ILP services are perfectly tailored to your skill level, no matter where you are in your athletic journey. With ILP, you are in control. Choose the steps that matter most to you. Diagnosis, treatment plan, recovery, or the whole journey. ILP services are tailored to your unique needs. Rushing for care is a common pitfall, leading to future problems. ILP Sports Consultants helps you make the right decisions, ensuring that you receive timely and safe care. And here's a bonus. Brian hosts the Injured List podcast, sharing insights and athlete stories you won't want to miss. Whether you're a concerned parent or grandparent, or an athlete yourself seeking guidance, ILP Sports Consultants is your beacon of hope in sports injury management. Visit ilpsports.com today. That's the letters ilpsports.com. ILP Sports Consultants, where your well-being is the priority and your recovery is the mission. Choose ILP Sports Consultants for a healthier sports journey, helping you get back in the game the smart way.
Blog Talk Radio.
Tonight we'll go back in time to seasons past, when 22 men graced the rugged fields of yesterday, fighting for one more first down, one more yard gain, one final score, which would bring victory after 60 minutes of battle on the gridiron. Tonight we'll explore the world of Gridiron Greats. Welcome to Gridiron Greats Football History and its Memorabilia on the Gridiron Greats Publishing and Broadcasting Network, in conjunction with Swick Enterprises. We're live from the Wallingford, Connecticut home of Gridiron Greats Magazine. I'm Bob Swick, publisher and editor of Gridiron Greats Magazine, and I'll be your host for the show. Gridiron Greats is the only publication in America which focuses upon the history and memorabilia of the North American football game since its inception in 1869. We cover 150-plus years of football history and memorabilia, and you can find us on the web at GridironGreatsMagazine.com. It is at this time I'd like to introduce my co-host. He's a senior contributing writer to Gridiron Greats Magazine, a football memorabilia historian, specializing in pre-World War II items, in particular Red Grange, and also Seattle Seahawk items, in particular Steve Largent. He hails from Portland, Oregon, Mr. Joe Squires. Joe, welcome to the show this evening.
As always, Captain, humbled to be here. Love it. It still gives me a chuckle to hear Steve Largent, focusing on Steve Largent items. My Steve Largent collection has become more of a caricature of myself than anything really, hasn't it?
Well, one can argue it's an iconic historical collection of Mr. Largent.
Yeah, I spend more time poking fun at myself in my Largent collection. It's like when somebody joins a chat room, like, "Hey, how's your Largent collection?" I mean, I'm not really curious. It's just kind of funny to ask them, where it just comes out of the blue. It's like, "What? How's my Steve Largent collection?" I know, it's just kind of funny. It just made me think of it.
Collectors want to know. They want to know about that collection. They're also very, very interested in the Red Grange collection. And just to get a little off a script, I did receive a advanced copy of Chris Willis's new book on Red Grange, which will be reviewed in the fall issue of Gridiron Greats magazine. And I just got it yesterday, and I haven't started reading it. But I looks great. It's a huge book. And Chris, as we know, we've had him on the show a couple of times, has an incredible way of telling a story and researching his books. It's just an amazing writer for the football memorabilia hobby and for football history in general. So it's I'm looking forward to reading it. So I was going to mention that, but I got it yesterday. Like I said, I barely opened it last night, glanced at it, and hopefully over the weekend I'll knock it out and read it.
Is it available? Is it available for purchase yet, Bob?
I think it might be. I think it's just coming out now, and I do vaguely remember him saying it was sometime in August was the release date. So I normally will get review copies at least a week or two before they're actually out. I have a feeling that's out already, though. So we'll have to check it out. I'm going to contact Chris also and see if he can come on quick for another show and talk about that book and anything else he's working on. And I know I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I'm sure you will definitely enjoy.
He can give us an update on how that Steve Largent book is coming.
That's the one you should be writing.
In
your spare time.
Restraining order, Bob. Remember restraining order.
You could start sleeping 4 hours in the morning, get up and write for 2-3 hours before your day begins, and after about 4 months of that, you'll be on some island sleeping 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for a couple of weeks to recover. But in any event, I used to get up very early. I get up normally at 5 o'clock in the morning, anyways. But I used to get up at 4 and write from roughly 4 to 5, and then get ready and get to work or whatever. But I've stopped doing that lately. Normally I do that during the winter. Springtime, summertime, I prefer being outside and more active that way. But in any event, we're going to touch base before our special guest comes on this evening on the continuing issues of the grading scandal problem in the hobby. A couple updates, if there are considered to be updates. Apparently, and to reconfirm what we talked about last week's show, the FBI served a lot of notices apparently to dealers, auction houses, about certain cards that were graded, so on and so forth. I've been trying to get more information, and my information is becoming more and more limited other than what I'm reading. The couple contacts that I had that were trying to fill me in on the story basically don't have any new information other than that. The issue becomes, again, can the hobby accept all these returns, number one? And the second thing, we talked about this briefly last show, what happens to all these bad graded cards that have been trimmed and altered? Do we just put them back in the hobby and say they're trimmed or altered? Do we discard them? Do we throw them out? What are we going to do with this stuff? And
nobody. Sorry.
And legitimately, and again, we've talked about this numerous times. Legitimately, how are they not going to find their way back into the hobby? So it's a threefolded problem, and I'll hand off to you now.
well, as you mentioned, PWCC, they've offered to buy some of these cards back, but what they won't say is what they're doing with the cards once they've returned. And I've yet to have someone raise their hand and say they've received a refund from PWCC. PWCC says, send us your cards and we'll give you a refund. One, you've got to have proof that it came from that submitter, Gary Moser. And two, you've got to have proof that it was, a lower grade that was doctored in some sort. So, I mean, the burden of proof is going on you to prove it. I mean, it should be, hey, that 100% satisfaction, sticker you slap on the side of your website and all your listings should be, hey, I'm not happy. I suspect this. I don't know. It's but I've yet to see someone or hear someone say they've received a refund. And I've mentioned before, I've got some trepidations about sending in cards I think have been altered, because what if something happens to PWCC? What if the FBI, freezes their assets? What if, what if they go BK, bankrupt? What happens?
I agree with you with that, and my thinking suspicion is that they're gonna be shutting their doors, in a Chapter 7 or Chapter 11 bankruptcy a lot quicker than anybody anticipates. So again, as we both know, we both have dealt with bankruptcies in past years and in businesses. Okay, so we line up as a creditor. I bought $20,000, let's say, of graded cards that were altered from PWCC. They're under now. Now I'm creditor number 341 of all these individuals in front of me, so on and so forth. Okay, so now I just took $20,000 and I threw it out the window. How's that logical?
Yeah, and you're out your cards. I mean,
right.
And here's the tough part. If you keep them, and there's a record somewhere of, hey, this certification number, we believe is trimmed. If you sent a card into PWCC and asked for a reholder, and a new cert, I mean, now all of a sudden there's a little bit of malice in there. If you send these cards back to PWCC and they just say to hell with it and they list them, and that's what the word has been, is they're just going to relist them with a little disclaimer down at the very bottom. That's I don't know. I'm sure they'll word it like this. I don't know, but I mean these cards will find their way back. They're being tracked by cert numbers. I mean, unless, again, PWC sends them to PSA to get reholdered with entirely – if PSA reholders a card for, like, a grade review, they give it the same cert number. So the only way to get these, into a different holder would be to somehow make an arrangement with PSA to reholder with a different cert number, or to crack them, throw the flip away, and then send them back in. But then they run the risk of half of them not being holdered.
Right.
Yeah, it's.
So that
I don't know. Nobody said what happens to these cards.
Yeah, and I think that is, of the three-folded problem, that's probably going to be the biggest issue down the road. And I'm not talking just now. We're talking 3-4 years from now. Okay, so let's say it takes a good 1 to 2 years to shake out and actually figure out a plan that's acceptable to the collector who's bought the graded card that is altered, and acceptable to the law enforcement officials who are investigating it. And realistically, it has to be acceptable both to PSA and to any of the auction houses or dealers who are selling this stuff. And again, in the case of PWCC, I don't see how they were not knowledgeable of what was going on. I truly, I can give them all the benefits of the doubt they want. How do you not know you're running a scam like this? This is what I don't understand.
Yeah.
And they do it so brazenly to the point where, okay, tough. You bought a bad card, and that's your tough luck. You know what I mean? What industry, what business do we know of operates in this manner? I mean, take it as simplistic as going to a restaurant. You're given a bad dish, and you send it, and 99.9% of the time, you will send it back, and you will get a different dish, or you will get a refund, or whatever the case might be, and it's done. You know what I mean? And it's, mean, it just doesn't make sense. And we're talking thousands upon thousands of dollars floating out, you know, in the card hobby, and it's all questionable. It's all questionable. And that's what I really don't like. That's what really bothers me.
And then suddenly, if you see this card, if I have a card that appears on this list, and I decide not to send it in, but instead I decide to just sell it, to list it on eBay or to send it to an auction house, suddenly am I being an a-hole for doing that, for being like, dang it, all right, well, I'd rather just sell this thing than deal with PWCC or or PSA. Suddenly your reputation would be at stake. Hey, Joe, did you know that card was on the list? Yeah, I did. But I decided to sell it anyways. Well, man, you got to say something. No, not really, because that affects the sale. I don't know. And suddenly a lot of morality is just at play here. It's tough. I've mentioned before, this is just lost. It's made me lose a lot of faith in third-party grading and in my beloved Leaf set. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. You know, and it's ethics with a capital E, and I'm not seeing it. I'm not feeling the love with all this stuff going on with it. And I agree.
You know, I go back, and I hate to say this for the 100th time, but I'll say it again. You know, I've been shot down, condemned because I never embraced graded cards when they first came out. I always said, explain to me how somebody who is half my age can grade a card better than me. Not that I wanted to have to grade cards. And B, how do you come up with all these different numbers? How do you come up with all these different values? And as graded cards go on, and I use the only graded cards that I own are the Mayos. How can this be an SGC 20 and this one is an SGC 40 when that should be a 20 and this should be a 40? I mean, there's no logic applied to the way anything was graded. And again, as now we progress many years into the grading concept and third-party graders, and they've come and gone. You know, where are we now? Okay, now we got a real bad crisis on our hands. And again, I'll go back to the National. I see young kids, guys, teenagers, say they're 18 to 21, and they're plunking a heck of a lot of money down for a graded PSA 9 or PSA 10 card, no matter who it is, what sport, whatever. They're buying it because they want the grade. Okay, so if they ever progress to collecting older cards, are they going to really collect the older cards once all this is shaken out? You know what I mean? So it could have a serious impact in the hobby, to the point they're going to say, hey, listen, I started collecting, let's say, in 2014. I'm only going back to 2014. Good. The older stuff looks cool, but I don't want to touch it because I don't think it's graded correctly. I think it's bad, so on and so forth. Okay. So we're going to have a bunch of 80-year-old guys trying to trade off PSA 7 and 8 Leafs that they know were altered or trimmed or whatever. I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. So it's a problem. It's a big problem. And it's not going away anywhere quick.
3 years ago, I wrote an article for Gridiron on doctored cards, a 48 Leaf set.
Yep.
Card Doctor's most favorite set. And I knew it was a problem then, but I kind of knew what to look for. And, but it's not me. It's the rest of the hobby. I've mentioned before, there was a guy who bought a PSA 8 George Connor and then bragged to me about it. I'm like, that's trimmed. He's like, what do you mean it's trimmed? It's been graded. I'm like, oh, man. Oh, boy. There's a lot of people out there who just have that blind faith in the TPGs.
Exactly. Exactly. And we see it in graded packs, packs that have been, as far as I'm concerned, resealed, and you can tell once you open them. Yeah. They're bad cards in there, and there's no possible way that card was an actual that pack was an actual pack from whatever year it was. And you proved it with how many years ago was it? 65 Philly pack. I knew darn well that was a rewrap. So it was ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So
I gave Bob a 65 Philly. For the listeners, I gave Bob a 65 Philly graded GIA wax pack at the National to open, because that was one of his first packs that he opened. And he opened it and immediately knew that was a resealed pack, just because of, what was it again, Bob? You told me it was like the way the poster was folded or something?
Yep, yep. And you could just tell by the cards how those cards should have been gem mint, and there should have been a nice piece of bubble gum stuck to that card, that last card, and it wasn't there. So you could tell. Nose up.
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell our listeners, and I'm also telling our readers, and I've told several privately, we are going to stay on this issue as much as we can, and any information we get, we will definitely be sharing it with especially on the podcast as we go along, as we gain more information. I'm planning to try to write something for the next issue of GG on this, trying to put it as eloquently as possible and satisfy the legal team how I'm writing it. So we'll see what happens. But in any event, we're going to move on. We're a couple of minutes behind schedule. Our guest is here, and I'd like to introduce him and start our interview. Our special guest tonight is a huge Tony Dorsett fan from childhood, and he's also a New England Patriots fan. He's retired after 20 years with the Sheriff's Department. He's currently employed at a medium-sized group industrial chemical company and has earned himself the nickname of all-purpose running back. Tom Brady and James White are his favorite Patriots. He hails from Newbury, Massachusetts. I'd like to introduce to our show Mr. Paul Perkins. Paul, welcome to the show.
Captain, how are you? And Admiral Joe, how you doing, buddy? I figured I'd throw the Admiral tag out there, Joe. I remember your big Hall of Fame rookie set. That was the Admiral set, so I wanted to give good credit to you, sir.
Was indeed. That was a nod to my Navy days when I was in the Navy. That's a great memory, Paul. I love it.
Yeah, well, thank you for your service.
That's good. Paul,
so how you guys doing tonight? You guys doing a great job with the show so far. I enjoyed listening to what you had to say. It was always good to keep on top of things that are going on in the hobby. I really enjoyed that, so I thank you.
Well, we got a serious crisis, and I'm not taking it lightly. And as I've said numerous times, I know I'm a dinosaur in the hobby, but you know what? This was totally uncalled for, and it's not good for the hobby. I don't care how anybody can twist it. Being a positive, we could say it's positive. We're going to get these bad cards out of the market. Well, why did the bad cards come into the market in the first place?
Yeah.
Because of profit. It's simple.
I want to correct that. I think we've had, something bad in the hobby for a long time. I mean, I wrote an article about this 3 years ago. We've had it. I think a lot of us have kind of buried our head in the sand or said, it's not me who's buying those crappy cards, it's somebody else. And now we're just realizing the magnitude of it with the shill bidding, with with resubs, with money being passed to graders. I really hope this doesn't go away anytime soon. I really hope some people end up in jail over this, or being fined, or being banned from the hobby. I really hope this one, doesn't die in the wind. So
I agree. It's a bad situation. It's really bad. But we're going to change the subject and talk about some fun stuff now. And Paul, I'm going to ask you, how'd you get started collecting football cards, and in particular your collection?
Well, the main thing that drew me into the football cards was the love of football. 24/7, 365. I'm loving football as well, Cap. So it's that really is what drew me in, the love of football. And as a kid, I had a bunch of Tony Dorsett cards, and as much as I love Tony Dorsett and the other players that I would have from the mid '70s, early '80s. I liked them, and I enjoyed looking at them and all that. And it wasn't until we're talking back before the internet, so my access to stuff was very limited. And I went to my first card show and looking around, and I happened to come across a guy who was selling some football, and I looked down and I saw this little square box of a card with the last name of Trippy on it. And I'm like, oh, that's an odd name, but I love the artwork on it. And I went over and I asked the guy, is this guy good? And, he's telling me he's a Hall of Famer. So I'm like, wow. I really liked that. And then the next card I picked up was a guy by the name of George Goulianix, and I was just like, wow, I was very curious about these uncommon last names on these cards, but even more so the artwork. And, I started just really going through them, and I'm like, wow, these are gorgeous little paintings of cards. So that's pretty much how it happened right there. I ended up buying a handful of cards, and I ended up being hooked.
How old were you there?
I was just about, I would say about 24, 25 years old. I had gotten out of the hobby for a while, and I started getting back into baseball cards, and until I didn't realize these gorgeous Bowman football existed, so I ended up bumping into them by accident at the show, and I fell in love with them. I mean, all the Bowman sets, they're the colorful, they're like little oil paintings, I think, and they're just the most beautiful cards, I feel.
The 48 Bowman is pictures. I assume it was a later Bowman issue. Which Bowman did you fall in love with? The Trippy. Yeah, go for it.
The Trippy that's the card that I originally had bought, but at the same time when I was at the show, I looked over and there was another card, and it happened to be of Deacon Dan Towler, and it was a much larger card. And as you know, I found out it was called the 1952 Bowman Lodge Football. Yeah. And I'm holding this card as we speak right now, Deacon Dan Towler, and I picked this card up. My first Bowman Lodge I picked up back around 1994, 1995, and I still have it to this day. It's my favorite card that I've ever bought.
We heard you tap it on the table, so we assume it's in a plastic tomb. It's graded?
Well, it's not graded. I never got the card graded. I wanted to keep it in a top loader, and that way I could take it out, enjoy it when I want,
Nice solid hit.
So, yeah, eventually I did some more research, and, fast forward a few years, the Internet started coming around. I was able to start looking more into the sets and stuff, and I really started it was a toss up with me on which one was my favorite, so I decided I just loved them all. The 50, 51, and 52 Bowman sets. I feel it's like the best 3-year run of football cards ever out of all the years of football production. I feel those three are my favorites.
And the one thing with the Bowmans that I'm glad you brought it up, because a lot of collectors don't realize all the differences in the card sets from 48 to 55. For example, right off the top, there's no 1949 set. Why? Okay, 1948, black and white photographs. 1950, they start the paintings. They start doing the drawings. 1951, a different size than 48 and 50. 1952, two different sizes, the same size as the 51 Bowman set, and now a bigger card. And then 53, 54, and 55, classic, vintage, 1950s type football cards with beautiful pictures, very interesting write-ups at the time also. So that to me, the Bowman run from 48 to 55 really gave you so many different things to look at. So many different areas to collect. It is really a pure run of football cards. I've always said that.
Yeah,
I just got to get my.
You have many different options. You have the black and white with the 48. You have the smaller cards with the 1950 and 51, and for the 1952 set, you have the smaller size and the larger size, and then moving on past that to the 53 and 54, you have great vintage photography. Although I don't feel that the 54 set is one of their better efforts, but I do feel that it's worth a mention that it does have a vintage look to it. And then rounding it off for their last year at 1955, the cards I love them all. I gotta say, my biggest complaint and disappointment lies with the 52 Bowman Lodge. It is my favorite set, And it's very upsetting to me that Dick Night Train Lane, Marion Motley, and Max Speedy, three iconic 1950s players, didn't make their way into that set, and it's been a thorn in my side knowing that since I've started collecting this set.
Oh yeah. Why is Don Hudson not in the 35 Chickle set? There's a lot of little ones like that. I've heard Bowman, 1948, they went head-to-head with Leaf, and it pretty much knocked Leaf out of the contention. Obviously, you take the 49 Leaf, it was, skip-numbered, used the same photos, gray cardstock, which was left over from 48, because you'll find a lot of, you'll find the, older, you'll find a few gray cardstock 48 Leaf cards. So you can tell that they had the gray cardstock, for a late print run of 48 Leaf. So Bowman took enough market share away from Leaf that Leaf limped out in 49 with something. I've heard they actually agreed. Leaf said they would go out of business. They would fold in 49 if Bowman didn't compete with them. But by the time they were done, Leaf didn't have the money to fight, have the money to carry on. So, and then Bowman took over. And then same thing, Topps in 1955. Topps put out the 1955 to try and dominate the market. And they took enough market share. Bowman folded in 55, and Topps took over.
Yep. There's a lot of I've always thought. I mean, there's been a lot of good information about the early Bowman football cards, and write-ups by experienced collectors and stuff. But I often wonder how much really concrete information is out there. I have a lot of questions. I find it kind of interesting on some of the player selection for that. The 52 Bowman Lodge, the college to pro, they have a lot of college football players in there that were high draft picks. But I'm sorry, like 7th and 8th round picks in the draft and never even played a full season. Yet they have a card in the set, and you never can really find out too much information about them, and it's just kind of odd how they threw together some of the names for that set.
That's interesting. I never thought about that. That's interesting. But, hey, quick question. First of all, Paul, I got to ask, do I have an accent to you? Do I talk funny? Just curious.
I would say you talk differently than the people that I'm used to being in the Boston area, but no, Joe, I think you're very well spoken.
Good.
I don't hear any accent in your voice. No, I do not.
Paul, since we're basically neighbors, one state over. I'm very used to the Boston accent, so it's still very common to me. So to me, you talk normal, and Joe talks differently because he's a West Coaster there. So that's the difference. I don't hear any Boston in this, and I'm well aware that I'm the one with the accent. That's for sure.
Bob, I thought you were going to say you get used to my sarcastic outlook on things.
Joe, you've been always very sarcastic, but in a good, fun way. I can tell you that.
I'm used to joking.
I'm glad that makes its way.
Yeah, many years we've been doing this. So.
I'm sure you have to Captain. I'm sure you have to have thick skin being around Big Joe.
And Paul, by the way, I always gravitated to you. You were one of those cool dudes on the CU boards who just had a sense of humor and I could joke around with. I just really enjoy people that I can throw a joke out there and they immediately don't get offended. If I say something and it can be taken as funny or an insult, and the assumption is Joe's being funny, that 99% of the time, that's the way I'm going to go. If I'm going to insult you, I'm going to be pretty upfront about it. So, I mean, I've always appreciated people who have a good sense of humor and intelligent sense of humor like you. So I've always got along with you all the way back.
Very, very much appreciated. And, and Joe, that's the thing. I get onto the CU boards, and, when I focus my attention to my card collecting, and it's all about fun and relaxation for me, you know. That's what the hobby's all about, and the more interaction you have with people, especially guys like yourself and Captain and other, you know, really passionate people, I think that it's a better camaraderie inside the vintage football community, which, you know, we all know is not as in-depth and as popular as a lot of the baseball guys, you know. But I think we got a great group, and, you know, I think that the future's looking bright for the vintage football. I really do.
Not a doubt. All right, let's get back to talking cards. All right.
Yeah,
and I was making fun of your accent. You know, and I'm an avid Bowman collector. I've completed the 48, the 50, the 52 small, and the 54 and 55. I completely agree with you. Bowman started mailing it in around 54, 55. I'll admit my favorite set is probably the 53. I really liked the artwork in there. But you know, I like asking about, you know, what your favorite card in each set is and what the hardest card to collect in each set was. I mean, I had my own tough ones. I know the expensive ones. I'm just curious to get your take on it. Which ones are your favorite and which ones were the hardest?
Well, I'll tell you, so my main focus is, like, I've been collecting the 50, 51, and 52, and I'm going to tell you about the 1950 set first. Is a quote that I got from you. I think you called it the bottom of the cleat set. You referred to that a couple of times because there's a couple cards in there where you're looking at the bottom of the cleats, and I'll tell you, I think there's several cards in the set that you can see the bottom of these guys' cleats, and I'm looking at both of them right now. That two of them that are my favorite from the 50 set. It's
what is it? Hang on, let me guess
Davis
that.
And the Tank
Glenn
Younger.
Army Davis and Tank Younger. Tank Younger is my favorite. It's got the flagpole in the background.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
I'm going to give credit.
Just such a great card too, and you know it's no secret that they're both Los Angeles Rams players, and I can't tell you how much I love those Rams uniforms of the early 50s. They really they burst with color. So those two by far and away are my favorite from the 1950. Mentioning one other card I really like as well, and
Paul,
not many people. Huh?
Well, real quick, I want to give credit where credit's due on that bottom of the cleat thing. Mike Thomas at Near Mint is originally the guy who pointed that out to me. I believe at a card show. I can't remember, but he's the one who said, you know, I love that. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I remember going through and looking at them like, well, there's a couple in here. So as much as I love that bottom of the cleat quote, you know, I picked it up and ran with it to Mike. So.
All right. Well, that came from good company. Mike Thomas. I haven't really spoken with him too much, but he's done a wonderful job with his website and his write-ups on his cards. He's a very knowledgeable guy and comes up with some fun stuff. I've seen him in action a few times on the message boards. Another card. I don't know if many people actually have ever even heard of this guy from the Dallas Texans, John Roch. And if you ever get a chance to take a look at his 50 Bowman card, he's wearing a white jersey with number 18, and he looks just like Peyton Manning. So it's kind of a funny card.
Yeah.
So
great.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah. Definitely looks like him.
Outstanding. That's a great call.
Funny. So, and then, going to the 51 set, my favorite is, I got a couple that I would have to say my favorite again, and this time it happens to be the Redskins uniforms really pop on these cards too, and I'd have to say the Sammy Baugh's by far my favorite from the 51 set. It's just a classic pose of slinging Sammy Baugh. It's just with the stadium seating in the background. It's just a great setup of a card. And then I don't know if you guys, I'm sure you're familiar with this one. Visco Gergich looks like it's a pretty exciting card. He's just this menacing rush towards making a tackle or a hit on somebody, and that's just those. I would say those two stick out as my favorite from the 51 set.
Nice.
And then, moving on to the 52 Bowman Lodge, it's, this set has so many favorites in it of mine. It's really difficult to iron it down to what I would consider my favorite. But, I mean, the NFL Hall of Fame rookie himself, Frank Gifford, that card is, to me, is
beautiful.
It just exemplifies vintage 1950s football, It's just such a gorgeous card. Then you got the bookend of Norman Van Brocklin, the first card in the set. That's another favorite of mine. And going back again in Los Angeles Rams uniform. So, the artwork is just really beautiful in all these cards. I really do. I love them. I can't say enough about them. The 52s, the Lodge is what I'm sure most people agree is definitely what I believe to be the most difficult set to put together. Asking you guys who are definitely more knowledgeable than me, I've read several times that the 52 small is actually more difficult to put together, but and I've never pursued that, so I can't really comment on it one way or the other.
Yeah, the 52 small, they're short printed. The card's divisible by 9, and then 9 minus 1. So card 8, 9. Card 17 and 18, card 26, 27. Those are tough in large and small. But if you get into the smalls, the 52 smalls, the second series, the sheet number 2, 52 small short prints, divisible by 9s get really, really hard. So it's less collected, but a lot more tough cards, the short prints.
I've always like I said, I've always focused on the larger cards, and there are just some bears in that set. I got to tell you, like the Gene Ronzani, Hubert Johnsons of that set. The Jim Lansford is probably the most was
card
always
144.
Always talked about as being the, a legendary tough card in the hobby. But I'll tell you, I think some other cards give it a run for its money in the set. I mean, Joe Steidaher that's a NFL Hall of Fame rookie right there, and that's
short
no
print.
slouch as a short print card either,
And a short print. The Lansford, the 144 Lansford, is divisible by 9 minus 1, and it's the last card. It's a corner. On the sheet, and I'm sure when you were growing up, I mean, we used to rubber band our cards together, and most kids would put them in numerical order. So if you put a rubber band on the back card, the Lansford gets damaged. So short print, corner sheet, likely to get dinged, and last card in the set, for rubber bands. I mean, all of the formula is there, for it to be a very rare card.
Yeah.
I've started and stopped that 52 Bowman Large set like 3 different occasions. Sold off everything I had 2 times. Started collecting it again in earnest probably about 7-8 years ago. Then I stopped again, and I'm nowhere near even halfway through the set. It's just a tough set, and to me, collecting it raw, I don't have a problem collecting it raw, but you got 2 big cards in there. They're going to go into thousands upon thousands of dollars, even if they're in lesser condition. You know what I mean? So I got the 52 small set, and to me that was back when I was collecting it years ago. I basically just saw all the 52 smalls. I rarely saw any larges out there. So it's interesting.
Hey, Paul, quick question here. Like for me, collecting the 50 Bowman, the number 100 Sammy Baugh was the last card I got, mostly because I just wanted it to be in good quality. But card number 1, the Doak Walker, is pretty much the tough card to get in that. Did you agree? Because there are a lot of people who think that's his rookie card, because the 48 leaf, card of Doak Walker is him in a college uniform. Did you have problems with that one?
Yeah, you know what? I got to tell you, Joe, I have not ever owned the 50 Doak Walker, so I really can't say that I have, since I haven't owned it. my main focus has always been the 52 Bowman Large. The 50s, I will grab a few of them here and there. I haven't collected this, attempted to put together the set, but I have absolutely heard a lot of people talk about that Doak being very difficult for sure.
Yeah, it is.
But in the NFL, the rookie Hall of Fame set for the PSA set registry, they recognize the 48 Leaf Walker as his rookie, correct?
Yes.
They do. Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, yeah. Well, again, that has it's the number one card in the set, and that's always a tough card to get in decent condition. But I haven't really even seen any. I know that they use the same. If I can just skip around a little bit here on this, I find it funny that Doak. One thing about that Doak Walker and several other cards is that Doak Walker. For the 1950, they used that picture again in the 1952 Bowman Lodge. I think they just kind of blew it up a little bit. Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But
sure
again, like I said, all these cards they have a lot to offer. They're just the most beautiful sets in my opinion, and I really enjoy collecting them. They're a lot of fun.
Do you collect anything else in football cards or football memorabilia besides that?
It's the one thing that I'm very big on is I love vintage sport magazines and football yearbooks. I really like picking up old magazines from this time frame, and what I find really good is that sometimes you get really some good articles on the lesser-known players that seem to have a little bit more popularity at that time, and you get to read a lot of information on them. I have one sport magazine and of course, Bob Waterfield is a Hall of Famer, but I have one article in that's 6 pages of all stuff on an interview and stuff done with Bob Waterfield, and it's just the information that you can find in the vintage magazines. In my opinion, is it's so great. That's why I collect them, and I love to read them. But that's about as far as I go. I'm really, my focus is mainly on the cards and the magazines. Those are the two things that I get the most enjoyment out of.
And I'll tell you, that's a classic era for sports writing, and just to see, I do agree with you 100%. The information there that was written about a lot of obscure players, the teams, so on and so forth, you don't see it anywhere. And it's you're reading the history of the game, basically. When you pick up an old Peter Smith's old sport magazine, or the old True yearbooks, football, illustrated annual football magazines. There's so many, good older magazines out there, Sports Life, Sports Stars. There was great articles in them. I truly always loved those types of publications, and I've read and reread them many, many times over the years. And, honestly, they are very difficult to come by. I don't care what anybody says. In fact, I had a few publications from the 60s at the National this past summer, and I had one guy. He basically said there was only a handful of dealers at the show that actually had older publications, and he really had to hunt for what he was looking for. So it was interesting.
I have trouble finding them on eBay, honestly. And eBay is such a wide marketplace. I agree with you. Absolutely agree with you that they are very difficult to come by. And and I'm not even looking for great condition. I just want readable with fairly decent covers, and they are tough to come by. It's a very good point.
And the other thing too, media guides. There were media guides at the time. They're truly difficult to find. And if you do find them, they are being sold at a much higher value today than they were 10, 15 years ago. And but again, the information there is just incredible. I got a handful of Bears media guides from the 50s. And they're fascinating reads. They're classic football history you're reading. Great information.
They're really good. And one other thing I'll say is back in in the early 50s and whatnot, around that time period, the college game was covered just as much as the NFL with these players. Like the college players had just as much hype, I think. And we all know that going from college to pro, a lot of times you don't really make it. So, but some of these guys find their names on these cards that we collect, and you might not read much about them in the NFL history part of it, but you might find a decent article on them covering the sports, college football game back then too. So there's a wide, many angles that you can find some fun stuff in there.
Yep, I agree.
Another quick question there, Bird Dog. I mean, you're ex-prison guard. I mean, I remember exchanging stories with you, private messages.
Yeah.
Do you have any adventures in obtaining cards for your collection? I mean, did you ever guard Mastro or Doug Allen while you were a guard, anything like that?
Yeah.
Wow.
I wish I could. I wish I could come up with a great story. Because it's funny. Because a lot of guys coming from law enforcement, the stories start off small and they get up to be
did you say
mountain-sized long after they retired. And unfortunately, I can't relate to anything as far as those fellas are concerned. But the stories, I can't really. Huh?
Did you say law enforcement?
Joe?
Is that spelled? Did you say law enforcement? Is that spelled LAWR?
LAW.
Law enforcement.
Yes. Hit me on that accent again, yes. But I got to tell you though, every time I go to a football show, that's my my football card show, whatever. That's my adventure right there. Because you never know what you're going to find at a show. And just with the relations that you build with other collectors and talk with on, VFC. I met. I'm sure you guys know Eric Stang. He's a great guy. Goes to all the events, and one of the most difficult cards that I've been trying to find for a long time is a 52 Bowman Lodge Charlie Connolly, and I'm happy to say that I actually sent the payment for the card today, a couple hours before I got on the phone with you. Eric made a contact at the National and was so good to give me the guy's email, so I started exchanging emails with this guy out in Minnesota who I would never have known. And lo and behold, he had my 52 Bowman Lodge Charlie Connolly, so I was able to pick it up today. So that's my latest adventure in finding a card that I really wanted, and I'm really pleased. I got to tell you.
Right on. Eric's classy guy. We had dinner with him in Cleveland, didn't we, Bob? At that group, at that football dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, classy guy.
I met Eric at a show in Massachusetts here a couple back in the fall.
Yeah.
He really is. Yeah. He's a great guy. Got a lot of good energy about him, and he's always looking to help people out. He's an asset to the hobby, that's for sure.
Good.
Yeah, actually, that was our Thursday night dinner in Cleveland last year, and he came and Joe, you had your son, and you got introduced to him. So he's a great guy, very great asset to the hobby. I gotta, just as an aside, he picked up a ton of Viking player photos at the National, and we had some time, so he showed me them, and there were several I had never even knew existed as far as sizing was concerned and print on them. So I found them to be amazing, and I always tell collectors, that's a long overlooked part of our hobby. Individual player photos, team issued, and team photos, team issued. Great additions to your collection if there ever was any. But his collection of Viking stuff is just amazing. And again, a couple issues ago, we had the interview with the gal who runs the Vikings Museum at the stadium there, and that was very interesting to see and talk about at the same time. And I do agree with you, Paul. You never know when you're going to see at a show, and that's why I like shows to this day. And I've been on the show.
They have a lot to offer. It's always a fun adventure for me. Absolutely.
Right on. Well, I
gotta ask. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was going to say I threw together a quick quiz for you if you have time. But if we have one more question, Bob, I think we do. Yeah.
Let's do the quiz first, and then I'll wrap it up with my final question. I know you like quizzes.
All right.
So.
Well, Paul, we've reached the spot in the podcast where we have Joe's quiz.
Okay.
So don't be nervous, and just answer from the heart.
Okay.
Usually, I compare somebody's. You're an unshy, Patriots fan.
Yes.
And I got to tip my hat to the Patsies. I love dynasties. So just answer from the heart here. All right, ready? It's multiple. Just a choice A or choice B. Who's the better quarterback? Tom Brady, Russell Wilson?
Tom Brady.
All right, I'm going to give you that one. I'm going to give you that one just because Russell's on the upswing of his career.
Okay.
Give Russell a few more years, though. Give him a few more years. All right. Question number 2: Edelman or Steve Largent?
Oh, Joe, that's a tough question right there.
All you have to do is
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to give it to Steve Largent, and the reason why Steve Largent's, his accomplishments speak for themselves. I mean, he's a Hall of Famer.
Yep.
I'll give it to Steve Largent overall, but I can tell you right now, to be fair to myself and what I really believe, if I was going to have a wide receiver start for my team today, it would be Julian Edelman.
Well, of course, Steve Largent's 60.
Largent's been retired for a long time, right?
Yeah. No, but you summed it up perfectly there. Hall of Fame. Only one of those is in the Hall of Fame. All right.
And you can't take that away from anyone.
Yeah, except O.J. Simpson. Okay.
Fair enough.
Second question. Better defensive back, David Butler or Cam Chancellor?
I'm going with Cam Chancellor. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. He's the heart and soul of the Legion of Boom. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Cam Chancellor, he absolutely has my respect as a player. Absolutely.
You know your football. I like it. Okay. In that horrible Super Bowl against the Seahawks and Patriots, bad call, should have run beast mode, or just a great defensive play?
It's honestly, Joe, we're going 50-50 on that. I have to say, there was absolutely zero reason not to run Marshawn Lynch in that game. I mean, I had the game lost, and then Russell dropped back and threw that pass, and it was you saw the game. It was a great defensive play. So honestly, I don't think you can. I would say 60% bad call, 40% great play. How's that?
See, and I would have flipped that. I always give credit where credit's due. That was great defense. That's a defensive coordinator watching, knowing a team loves that slant inside the 5-yard line, blah, blah, blah. If they even would have had Marshawn in on the play, he was on the sidelines. That's a little bit of ego got in there.
Yeah.
I'd say it was 60, 70% great defense and 30%, hey, man, just run it right down the gut. Stop us if you can.
Well, I think if you ask 100 people or 1,000 people if they would have thrown it or run Marshawn Lynch there, less than 1% is going to say, oh, no, I would have thrown it. That's kind of why it was just such an epic bad call, in my opinion. But,
without a doubt.
If it worked, I guess we wouldn't be talking about it.
All right.
Okay.
Last question. Last question. Sorry, Captain. So, Hoodie or Vince Lombardi?
I'm going to go with Vince Lombardi. I think Bill Belichick has done a lot of good things, obviously, but I think he's held Tom Brady back a few times over his career. Vince Lombardi.
All right.
The argument
and you just made the captain happy. You made the captain happy.
All right, we're
Very good.
running,
That's all I got, Bob.
We're running out of time, Paul. In 60 seconds or less, any advice for a beginning collector of football cards?
Yes, focus on what you want to do and become educated on a lot of the things that are going on in the hobby before you start slapping those greenbacks down. You know, that's it right there. Get educated, stay focused, and there's no rules to it. Do what you enjoy and what you like. That's the fun of the hobby.
That's great. Paul, thank you for being on the show. We got less than 2 minutes. What a pleasure, and what a great collection you got. And I got to, we'll get together somehow at our Shriner show, or we're going to have a get-together here at the compound and invite the East Coast guys here. So should be very
I'd
interesting.
love to.
Thanks
And
for
listen, guys, it was an honor to be on your show. I really do appreciate it. You guys are great. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks.
Right on. Good to have you on.
Thank you.
All right,
Bye-bye.
We're down to about a minute, Joe. Real quick, 2-minute warning and wrap up. What'd you learn on tonight's show in 25 seconds?
I learned I can tolerate a Boston accent, but that doesn't mean I have to live with it.
Then you're going to have a tough time living on the
kidding.
coast. So. That's a good one.
No, I used to work with a guy from Boston, so I'm used to it. It's cool. Paul's that classic Boston guy, just a good disposition. I like him.
Yeah, that was good, and I like the enthusiasm he brings to the hobby as far as collecting. And
yeah.
You know, I can picture Paul at home studying the fronts and the backs of the cards and comparing them from year to year in his Bowman run, and that's cool. That's what the hobby's all about. You know, it's not how much slab plastic you can stack in one room of the house type of thing. You know, enjoy the collection. Look at the cards, touch them, feel them. You know, it's history you're touching. It's history that you're reading about, you're studying, and that's what it's all about. All right, we're almost out of time. Thanks for listening. If you're looking to subscribe or any back issues of Gridiron Greats magazine, please check out our website, gridirongreatsmagazine.com. Hopefully next week we're going to have one more show for August. Thanks for listening. Thanks, Joe. We'll be talking.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I wanted to thank you for stopping by to listen to another episode here on the Sports History Network. Our podcasters are passionate about uncovering and sharing sports stories from yesteryear. And if you didn't know it already, we have over 30 shows across the network covering all sorts of sports history topics. In fact, here's a glimpse into one of our awesome podcasts here on the network.
Each week, the official Football Learning Academy podcast will take you deep into the history of pro football through interviews with players, coaches, or administrators in the NFL, as well as interviews with Pro Football Hall of Fame selectors, authors, and historians. You'll learn how the game evolved and important moments that shaped the sport into what it is today. And don't miss the Pro Football History Nugget of the Week. Listen to the official Football Learning Academy podcast on the Sports History Network.
How about that? I bet you're super hyped to go listen to that new podcast, right? Well, to learn about this show and all the other podcasts on the network, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Again, that's sportshistorynetwork.com/podcast. Head over there today to find your next favorite sports history podcast.